What's going on, guys? I'm sure everyone's probably more interested in the UFC coming up, but we did have a Bellator go down last night, so we might as well touch down on it. Bellator 259 from Uckensville, Connecticut. And again, they just love throwing these ultra prospects against mismatches. It's what they do. So, I mean, yeah, we're trying to bet on the favorite who is not going to lose them down. Unfortunately, things don't always work out the way we want. So let's rifle through this one quicker than normal. But Alexander Shudaly, I mean, first fight of the night, interesting Russian prospect. He comes in, he's 19-3. He'd already had wins over Adriano Martins. He was already a well-established prospect in Russia. This is his kind of his North American debut. So how does he transition? 5-1 favorite taking on Alfie Davis. Alfie Davis was a striker. We knew he had the movement from the outside. He would try to look to evade. And I mentioned how Shudaly didn't really have a ton of volume standing. The thing I noticed in this fight is that it's hard to back him up. I mean, he doesn't take any steps backwards. Guys don't really want to engage him. And maybe it's something they feel in there that the average person doesn't. Maybe he's got a lot of power, but they don't try to back this guy up. So Davis tries to dance around him, but he had no success. Shudaly did a really good job, cut the cage off. In the second round, he got him taken down. It was interesting. After the first round, Davis's corner's like, mate, maybe you should take this guy down. It's like, man, Alfie Davis is a fairly one-dimensional primary striker, and his own corner doesn't see the path to victory being striking. They're thinking maybe you should take him down. Obviously, it wasn't going to happen. Shudaly cruises in that spot. Be interesting to see where his ceiling is and how far he progresses from here. But he had been off like 17 months. He's still only 28 years old. So interesting prospect. Not the typical OV Russian that's going to grapple you down into the ground, but one of these good, sturdy, strong, durable Russians that still got some high upside. So interesting signing for Bellator, no doubt. Danny Sabatello, this one might actually be performance of the night. Not because it was the most entertaining of fights, but my God, he's going to cash a lot of tickets if he continues just to bring that kind of, I don't want to say pace or anything like that. It's just that game. He almost reminds me of a very young Colby Covington. Colby Covington, same thing, college wrestler, goes to ATT, a little bit bland in his character. So he develops his character of being the American badass and going out there and being patriotic and being a Trump supporter and, acting a fool and doing all these different things to bring attention, but the style is there because he's got pace, he's got wrestling. Sabatello has the wrestling. We know he wrestled at University of Purdue. We know that he was a 3-time NCAA D1 qualifier. The guy does have good wrestling. It seems that just the one loss on his record, the Irwin Rivera fight for Titan FC, he gassed out kind of around the third round. In the fourth round, he was completely cooked and he ends up getting TKO'd after a body shot. So the big reason why I'm fading him in this spot on the for Bellator 259 was he's coming in on short notice against Brett Johns. So I really thought cardio wouldn't quite be there. And wrestling a guy like Irwin Rivera and wrestling a guy like a lot of the guys he's been fighting to this point of his career, a lot different than taking on a guy who's a black belt in judo like Johns, who's fought in the UFC already, 5-2 record in the UFC. Only 2 losses to Pedro Munoz, Aljamain Sterling, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all before already. But I kept going back to his fight with Tony Gravely, and that it was very hard to hold him down, and it was exhausting wrestling him. And it wasn't the case with Sabatello. He walked in, he put his hands on him, he pressed him up against the cage, he single leg laced him, and that was it. He just rode him for the duration of the fight. Was it the prettiest? No. But again, Colby came into the UFC. Colby, in the early stage of his career, it's wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. Later, you develop the striking skills. This guy's at ATT. Mike Brown is his head coach. So, he's like A squad at ATT. He's making a lot of improvements. He's going to add the striking. He's going to add the cardio. But starting with the kind of smothering wrestling that he had, being able to do it on short notice against Brett Johns, who was a big signing for Bellator, that's huge. So it doesn't matter who they give him next. Honestly, this guy matches up with pretty much good with everybody in the division because he's going to be able to wrestle with them. And even though you want to throw him in, who are the top guys at 135 in Bellator, right? You got Eric Perez, who's another UFC cast-off. Sabatello would absolutely just wrestle him into the ground. You got Josh Hill, Canada's Josh Hill, good-looking record, just lost to Rafion Stotts. Oh, my God. Sabatello versus Josh Hill. Give me Sabatello all day. Give me Sabatello over Rafion Stotts. Give me Sabatello. After what I've seen from Darrion Caldwell and Leandro Higo, give me Sabatello over both of them too. Like, this guy's got some major upside. So depending on how much value they give him on his next fight, I'm looking to cash some tickets on him going forward. And lesson learned, listen, he didn't get the contract in Contender Series because Dana found him boring. The fans found him boring. It's a boring style. But he won a 30-24 in that fight. It was pure dominance. What Dana doesn't want is to bring him into the UFC and then he goes out and then beats good prospects. These guys that are entertaining, they're bangers. They're gonna put on a fight of the night because now he just makes them look bad, and fans still don't want to watch him. That's why Colby had to talk this shit. That's why Colby had to develop the striking skills, is become more of an entertainer because winning is just not enough sometimes. So, anyways, all hats off to Danny Sabatello. I mean, strong outing, especially considering he was on short notice. And, even him versus the world champion right now, which is Sergio Pettis. Interesting. Him versus Juan Archuleta. I mean, prior to the Pettis fight, I thought Archuleta would probably be all over him. I still think Patrick Mix beats him. But again, so many interesting fights. And this is Bellator's bantamweight division we're talking about. Not even the UFC's bantamweight division. Anyways, moving on. Liam McCourt versus Janae Harding. The read was there and it was. Initially, I picked Liam McCourt. Grappling versus striking. She's going to get this fight to the ground at some point. She's going to have the better grappling pedigree. We know with Janae Harding, she struggled in a lot of her fights off of her back. And then I watched the weigh-ins. I see the weight cut miss from McCourt. McCourt's full-time mother, been off for a little while, had gone on record prior to the fight and been like, it's the training situation is not a deal, and I haven't been able to get in, good sparring and good hard rounds, but I'm in shape and this and that and this and that. So it caused me to flip the pick to Janae Harding. Fight starts, pretty competitive, but I'm feeling good about it. Janae Harding, better gas tank. And as the fight progresses, McCourt starts to get tired. The takedowns are not there anymore. The judo black belt that she has, not able to utilize it. She starts to get tired. She's getting fatigued, starting to get hit. Janae Harding's trying to, put it together a little bit on her. And the fight tumbles to the ground. This looks like it's going to be a Janae Harding TKO probably within the next minute or two. At the very least, we're going into the third, possibly up 2-0. And this up kick from McCourt just rattles Janae Harding. Bang, one shot, right leg to the chin, and she falls straight down into a triangle choke. And McCourt throws on the triangle, and she gets the tap. She was super tired, but kudos to her because, that's huge. Being tired, being on your back, kind of getting desperate, not being here in a long time. And Janae Harding's, landing the strikes, big girl. Bad spot, boom, up kick changes everything. So crazy. That's the MMA game, right? That's why you're never out of it. You're always in a bad spot and you're tired and you got to persevere. So kudos to Liam McCourt, but she did miss weight and she did get out. Should I have switched the pick? No, but the way it happened, they fight 10 times. It's 50-50. I mean, there's nothing that could be had there. Davion Franklin, Tyler King. What takeaway can you have for Davion Franklin? Everything we knew about him before, we still know about him. With Tyler King, everything we knew about him before, we still know. I mean, he had been knocked out 5 straight times coming into the fight, all 5 times in the first round. And then what do you know? Davion Franklin goes out and knocks him out again. It's crazy that this guy used to play college football because watching him move is like Tim Sylvia back in the day. He's so awkward and flat-footed and just no mobility. It seems like he's permanently Bambi's mother on ice, chicken legs. He's just wobbled perennially at all times. So Franklin just went in there. He had his way. He did land a couple shots that King stood up to initially in the first minute or two of the fight, which is unusual for King. I mean, the guy's been knocked out very, very early, usually by the first solid punch that's landed. But Franklin, again, he's one of these guys that's mixing it up. He's only 2-0, so it's hard to give him a fault. He did what he had to do against Tyler King. Kudos to him. Bellator will match him probably at the same level next time around. But he needs to keep getting these good performances. First round knockout. I don't know what it does for him other than confidence, but keep growing. He's only 3-0 now. We're going to give him a pass there. Aviv Gonzalez. Oh my God. Who knows? Who knows? Should we be on this guy's nuts? Is he the next Chase Hooper? I mean, that's the $1 million question right there. He's only 20 years old. So we see time and time again, these guys, they look good, and then you rush them too far along. Coming into the fight, he's 5-0 for Bellator. He's got 5 submissions, five first-round submissions. He's the son of Haim Gonzalez, who is an Israel MMA fighting legend, BJJ black belt, 4th degree under Renzo Gracie. Has fought for Bellator, has fought for BKFC, fought Carlos Newton in his MMA debut back in 1998. The family is a well-established, good family. This kid's had every facet of the game offered to him from a young age. We haven't really seen his striking. His wrestling, it looks like it's more just, create chaos, go out there, create a scramble, and then lock on the scramble. So he'll go for an ankle pick. He'll go for a single leg. But a lot of it's just grab a hold of your leg, and then it seems like he likes dropping back for these leg locks now. He already had a leg lock in 16 seconds. I think it's the Bellator record for quickest submission. But he does the exact same thing to Sean Felton. And Sean Felton had never been submitted, hadn't really fought the highest level of grapplers. Had fought Anthony Romero to a decision. But his one thing is never been submitted. 30 years old. He's 10 years older. Maybe he can escape some of these positions, take the kid into the second round, and then we'll see where the kid's gas tank's at. Because that's the one thing with Gonzalez. First round submissions every time out. He's now 6-0 with 6 first round submissions. You keep getting those so fast. What's the gas tank like? What's the perseverance? Again, same thing Liam McCourt just showed. Well, we know that she can go there now if she needs to. We know that she's been there now. Gonzalez hasn't quite been there, but Didn't matter. Didn't matter that Felton was 10 years older. Didn't matter that Felton had never been submitted. Like, this kid loves the leg locks. And what you're seeing in no-gi jiu-jitsu a lot right now is the leg locks. They can attack the leg and get a submission right away. You don't get a hand fight for the rear naked choke. You don't get to lock up the arm and try to submit the guy with an arm bar. You don't get to, in gi, it's mostly collar grips, right? But I'm talking no gi, which is more applicable for MMA. It's like, well, what's the go-to submission? You know, the triangle choke doesn't really work as much as it used to. Plus, you got to be on your back. Who wants to be on their back? The guillotine, it's risky because a lot of the time you're giving up. If he pops his head out, you're now on your back going for the guillotine. But the leg lock, it's like underutilized because you go for the leg, he punches you in the head. But if you only need 5 seconds to get the guy to tap off this leg lock, he'll never have a chance to punch you in the head. The Husmar Pahars of the world, they could do it. This Gonzalez kid looks like that's what is going to be his MO for the time being. The one thing that's going to screw him is that Bellator will rank him now in their top 10. And he'll win a couple more fights, and then he'll end up ranked 6 or 7. And then from there, it'll be like, oh, well, we got to give them a top 5 guy. And the rest of the top 5 aren't other 20-year-old prospects. The rest of the top 5 are old UFC veterans. They're all like, you know, mid-30-year-old fighters, like other established guys. And he doesn't need that right now. He needs that in 5 years. But because the roster is going to be thin, they're probably going to push him into a fight sooner rather than later. Sumika Inaba, there's nothing we can really talk about there. Not that it wasn't good performance, solid performance. You know, again, we knew she was good in the clinch, loved the dirty boxing, loved the short knees. The thing is, she's 30 years old. So she's 2-0 now. What's the ceiling there? Again, she's a single mother. Sorry, she's not a single mother. She's her boyfriend fights for ONE FC. I'm thinking of who's the single mother on the card for was Leah McCourt. Sorry. With Inaba, if that same performance out of a 22-year-old, 23-year-old fighter, Bellator's got something. She's pretty. She looks good. She's a decent prospect. But at 2-0 and 30 years old, and the way the division is, it's like, I don't know that she'll ever get beat. She might get to a main card, but at 125 pounds, you'd have to really progress her far in her career a lot faster. And it's just not enough time. To make your debut at 28 or 29 years old already is you know, you just, the time's not quite there. She could be a successful fighter. I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things, I mean, Bellator's trying to push narratives on a lot of these guys. I don't know, other than she's pretty and from Hawaii and can be a prelim type fighter. There's just nothing there. She was minus 682, and she looked about minus 500. Like, she did look the part, but Christine Katsikas, I mean, so one-dimensional. Grant Neal, Tyree Fortune. So Grant Neal was my guy for the week. That was my play. I did the tape. I mean, he's a great athlete. He can wrestle. He's out of Colorado, 2-time state champion in high school, wrestled in college, had a strange outing to his college football career. But again, it was a D2 national champion in football. And that's on top of the high school wrestling career. Just a great athlete. Now that he's training at Genesis in Colorado, seems like he's going to put it all together. He's my guy. He was one of the few prospects on the card that was actually decent odds. It was like minus 240 when we got him on the preview show. He's taking on Tyree Fortune. I'm not going to lie, though. He didn't look great standing. Now, he's 6-0, so he's a little bit more refined than an Inaba, who's only 2-0. So he needs to be putting these other elements to his game. We know he can wrestle, and yet when he shot the initial takedown on Tyree Fortune, it didn't look like he overly committed to it. As far as being a 205er, mind you, Tyree Fortune is a big guy, but again, it didn't look like Grant Neal was the biggest guy in there. He was staying on the outside a lot, but he just didn't quite have the reach, and his punches were coming up short. When he would throw the kick, it was always like naked. He wouldn't throw a combination in front of it. He wouldn't really throw anything in front of it. And I would notice it would keep getting caught over and over by Tyree Fortune. Now, Fortune's a southpaw, which might have thrown him off a little bit. He's a tall guy, might have thrown him off a little bit. He wasn't just a rollover opponent. He was 5-0, and he's at an American top team in Oregon. So he had some like credible skills to his game. But again, I mean, he peppers them with the left hand, and I'm not getting worried. It's like 2 minutes into the first round. But I'm starting to think, geez, this guy's not a powerhouse wrestler. He just knows how to wrestle. And he's a great athlete, but how many great athletes have we seen in the sport? Just aren't great fighters. His hands didn't look like there was a ton of power there. His striking, still pretty stiff, still robotic, still one punch at a time. And then Tyree Fortune does it for us. At like the 3-minute mark of the first round, he realizes, shit, I'm probably winning this round. And then decides to just, for the first time ever, because he hadn't thrown no combinations, he just bum rushes forward with a 3-punch combination. And then that allowed Grant Neal to just duck under with the double leg. And as soon as the fight hit the ground, we had seen that from Tyree Fortune against Chuck Campbell in his last Bellator fight. But the same thing, he hits the ground and there's nothing there. And the broadcast team even mentions, they're like, oh, he trains with Fabio Schneer. It's like, yeah, high-level BJJ black belt, high-level MMA veteran, OG MMA veteran, out of Portland. huge guy, big heavyweight. You're working with this guy every day, and like now, guy on side control, and he just looked absolutely lost. And then, sure enough, the submission comes shortly thereafter. So good building performance for Grant Neal, but wasn't like it was effortless. It wasn't a flawless victory. I could see if they give him minus 600, minus 700, or minus 500 against a better opponent his next time out, might be cause for concern. Prior to the fight, it's like you're thinking this guy's got a huge level of potential. Now it's like, the potential's still there. Definitely still there. You just got a first round submission. Easy money, right? But yeah, he'll need more to his game. Because if Tyree Fortune doesn't run in with that combination and get taken down, and he just stays back and just keeps throwing those 1-2s at a time, he probably wins that first round. Then what happens in the second? Then what happens in the third? So good win for Neal. We'll monitor where he goes forward from here. But yeah, I mean, just probably chalk it up to a learning experience. Sadawad, Nate Andrews, talk about learning experience. Sadawad is the most tenured guy for Bellator. He was 11-10 coming into the fight on a 5-fight winless streak, 4-fight straight up losing streak, no contest in his last one. And it was like he's got 22 fights for the organization. He's had some big moments, but it just looks like his competitive days are behind him. The one thing with the old dog on the block is what goes last, right? It's not speed goes first, right? Power goes last. Sadawad's always had really heavy hands. We talk about the big win over Will Brooks back in the day. And, a lot of his career victories under the Bellator banner coming where he just overwhelms opponents. But Nate Andrews had never been knocked down. In fact, this guy's had a stellar career. It was like 15-1 for CES. Fought for PFL recently. Only 2 losses were against Chris Wade. All these losses by decision. Guy's got a good chin. Guy's got good, decent submission game and good strike. He looked so out of place in that fight with Sadawad that one would have to think that something was up. And I know Pete the MMA Heat, shout out to him. If you don't follow him already, go out and give him a check. He was with him in his corner. And yeah, I'd really like to know, like, was something off? Because every single punch that Sadawad threw dropped him, or at the very least wobbled him. And I know we all know Sadawad is heavy-handed. Like I said, power, last thing to go. So, but it was like Andrews literally and a few times Saad would look at the ref like, do you want to stop this? Like, what's going on here? And then Andrews would get back up, and then they would go to exchange, and Andrew would throw 2 punches and a kick, right? And the Sadawad would just counter with 1 shot and would glance off the top of the head, and Andrews would just wobble again. They gave him every opportunity. They even paused it at one point because it was a headbutt, and maybe it was a headbutt, but he was seen to be getting rocked prior to that. But he took no time. He got 5 minutes. He took no time. He just jumped right back into it and call it a concussion, call it a bad weight cut, call it he's also 37 and maybe it's hit him a lot harder, but stopped for the first time in his career, and bad look. And he was a fairly good signing for Bellator, right? Because he had a huge regional show career on the East Coast, like Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Went 1-2 with PFL, but beat Rashid Magomedov, and then signs to Bellator. He's going to factor in. They've probably given him some decent money, and bust. But cool for Sadawad. Guy's been around for so long, most tenured guy in the roster, bad streak, really needs this win, and goes out and gets that win. So that is an apple pie shit of sorts when you consider Nate Andrews was minus 370. He wasn't an apple pie shit to me personally at this point. Just because, yeah, I don't mind Sadawad. He was on a bad streak, but both of them are 37. Both of them were kind of at that same level. This next one, again, an apple pie shit of sorts. We'll get to the big one. But Valerie Loreta, Hannah Guy. I mean, Valerie Loreta, her ace looked great all 3 rounds. Her skills looked good for about 3 minutes in the first round. She did hurt. I don't know if she hurt, but she dropped Hannah Guy in the first round. She clearly was the better striker. The thing is that Taekwondo, a lot of it's like that bounce, spin, right? Bounce, but you're staying in one spot. You're not moving side to side. You're not dancing around. Karate is moving, Karate is, you can backpedal and hit people. You can counter a lot. Whereas Taekwondo, they seem set in their ways. So the problem in MMA is Valerie Loreta would sit there, bounce, get ready to unload a strike, and Hannah Guy would just bum rush forward. So how do you throw the strike now? Because you're planted. You're bouncing, you've got some movement, but there's nowhere to go. So these clinches would just come way too easy for Hannah Guy. And then Loreta, training at ATT, you would figure she's been working her ground game, and the wrestling looked okay. Her hips look good, that ace, she would be able to scramble and end up on top, but she kept taking the fight to the ground, and Hannah Guy would just kept throwing up the same armbar, and it would lock in every time. Now, props to Loreta, she would never tap, but the elbow wasn't all the way in, it was just the forearm, so she wasn't in danger of the actual armbar itself, but she wasn't doing anything to improve the position. Oftentimes she would sit in the armbar for a minute and two at a time. So going into the third round, it's like it's anybody's guess. I mean, a strong argument that it's 1-1, but apparently there's a strong argument it's 2-0 Guy as well. She's attacked with the armbar the entire time. She's getting hit. She's getting hurt. I wouldn't even say hurt. She's getting hit. She's getting beat up standing, but then she just forces this clinch fight, and then the fight goes to the ground. So now it's the third round. Let's say this is the third round to win this entire fight. And in the first minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes of the first round, it's Loreta's. She's stuffing the takedown, which she was able to do largely for the majority of the fight, was stuff the takedown. But then she would initiate these clinches, go on top of her, and then all of a sudden, now she's 22 years old. So bonehead decisions in there, yeah. But she's young. She was undefeated. She's never really been into those deep waters. There's no doubt about it, she gassed. There's no doubt about it, the ring IQ needs some work. And there's no doubt about it, she's not quite a refined prospect yet. So similar to a Paige Van Zandt. In fact, I thought Paige Van Zandt was probably further along in her own development than Loreta when she was in the UFC back in the day. But Loreta is to Bellator what Paige in the beginning was to the UFC, right? She's pretty. She maybe lacks some skills, but she's marketable. But they gave her a 2-1 Hannah Guy, the only pro fighter out of a small gym in Mississippi, and she struggled mightily. Her last fight, she didn't particularly look good either. They've done this with Anastasia Yankova as well. It's like, just because you're hot doesn't mean you're an excellent mixed martial artist. So interesting for Loreta. And the other interesting thing is when we talked about like Danny Sabatello, he's a top team guy at ATT. He's training with Mike Brown. He's getting in rounds with the best guys on the roster. When you look at, Shudaly, who's at ATT now too, he was training with Masvidal, and he was training with Dustin Poirier, and he was training with Movsar Evloev. Whenever you see stuff on Valerie Loreta, and she's always at ATT, she mostly does her own thing. So they might not be super high on her. Bellator is, we are, the fans are, the media is, but the coaching staff are not like, this is our next world champion. We're gonna invest a lot of time. They're kind of like, yeah, she's shaking her ass on Instagram, throwing some kicks. She's a fighter. She's definitely proven she's a fighter. I'm not saying she's not a fighter. I just don't know that she's something to get excited about. Maybe she's a Rachel Ostovich type fighter. Jalil Willis versus Meikan Mendoka. Jalil Willis is not the most entertaining guys going, but he's got skills everywhere. And we knew that he was athletic. He's got a jab. He's not super high output. He's got no finishing ability, no power, no submission, that offense to really bank on. But I mean, he's a generalist and he does everything pretty good. Mendoka was probably going to just move forward on him and try to bomb him. Willis needed to backpedal and use the jab, but I mean, the grappling is what won it for him easy. His wrestling looked pretty good in this fight. He didn't need much of it because once he did get the fight to the ground, he was largely able to coast out on him. But he's interesting, former LFA champion. We had talked about the fact that he's been signed to a couple of notable organizations, and none of them had really wanted to keep his services. Now he's with Bellator for a second go around because they once upon a time let him go as well. Is he going to make a whole lot of fans? Is he going to make some? No, but he's going to present some interesting fights for a lot of these guys in the division. He could progressively get a little bit better. He's a pretty well-rounded skill set. Interesting enough. Good victory for Jalil Willis. He was a near even money play, so not the guy I had the most confidence in, but he made it look fairly easy. Austin Vanderford versus Fabian Edwards. So Edwards, we know he's younger brother of Leon Edwards, and one's a striker, one's a grappler. Unfortunately, he wishes he was the grappler in this spot because he was going up against Austin Vanderford. And Vanderford, similar to Neal, didn't look great. Got the win, right? Did what he needed to do. But I think a lot of the time about upside. Now, we just look on a case-to-case basis. He's 11-0, and he's doing good. And Bellator is going to look to move this guy up progressively. But at 31, we know he's a wrestler. And he struggled a lot with those takedowns early in the first round, I thought. Kind of gave Edwards an opportunity to maybe steal the round, but then secures the second one. Okay, holds him down, no problem. We've got good top control on it. The second and the third round, Edwards largely gassed out. So Vanderford would get those takedowns and just hold him. But there's not a ton of ground and pound. There wasn't a ton of submission offense out of it. It was solid work out of Vanderford. Fabian Edwards is not a walkover opponent, but he is a high-level European. I'm not even going to call him a prospect. He's like a mid to high level European talent, right? Not internationally acclaimed guy, not high level guy. So Vanderford at 31 years old, this is his prime right now. He needs to be fighting for a title within the next 2 to 3 years figure. You don't want to be 33, 34, 35, and now you're 15-0, 16-0. So again, good fight, but it was a basic performance. The difference between what he did and say what Danny Sabatello did is Sabatello just dominates, Cardio looks on point, right? The whole time it's go, 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 looks strong in there, and just gives a credible guy like Brett Johns, is an internationally ranked opponent, just like no space. Vanderfort had the wrestling, had the strength, had the grappling to do a similar thing to Fabian Edwards. Instead, he would just settle into guard and kind of sit there and kind of chill. I like this guy a lot. Honestly, he should have got the contract on Contender Series. He's got that Alaska wrestling background. He's a state champion. He was in Gracie Baja, Portland, and I think that's where maybe he's kind of started to get stagnant. But him and Paige packed up, went to ATT in Coconut Creek, and this was his first time with those guys in ATT. And I just think he just needs to get comfortable. So I'm not writing him off in the slightest bit. I like Austin Vanderfort a lot. Hopefully we get some better prices on him moving forward. But to be honest, like minus 240, that was pretty good in this spot, considering we were getting a great style clash. That same style clash should have won us the Darrion Caldwell versus Leandro Higo fight. But Caldwell's just untrustworthy. And that's the official basis on him now. He's 100% bust at this point. If I know a lot of people would have been like, Cody, what are you talking about? Guy was already bust. Guy got submitted by Baby Joe Monglo. Guy went over to Ryzen and got beat up by Kyoji Horiguchi. Kyoji flies over to Bellator and it thing goes down again. The AJ McKee fight, he's got a neck injury, but he gets submitted. He's 33 now. He's already gym jumped. This is his third gym in Sanford MMA. But there's no doubt he's got skills. I mean, again, one of the best high school wrestlers in the nation. Goes on and wins a national title at the D1 level for North Carolina University. Could have made the Olympic team. But injuries actually pulls him out of his Olympic bid. And then that's kind of been the repetitive theme here is that for the first 5 minutes, he looks good. And then after that, he tires. His game falls apart a little bit. And it just doesn't go good for him. I don't disagree with the decision. And I had Caldwell. And anybody that backed me, I wanted those top 2 tickets. We're going to get a nice little profit. Not a huge profit, but a good night little profit. We just needed Caldwell to bring this baby home. Because Cyborg was, we knew she was going to bring it home. We just need Caldwell to do his thing. First round, does his thing. Gets the takedown, love it. Series of elbows, bounces Higo's head off the canvas. We get a 10-9 round. He's bleeding. He's opened up. We're looking good at this point. But Caldwell's problem is that he's a little too big for 135. So he has these big weight cuts to 135, and then his cardio is no good. And the longer the fight goes, he picks up injuries. He's dehydrated. His body starts to not respond, and he doesn't do anything. That's the reason he leaves 135 and he goes to 145. But then he runs into AJ McKee, who's just a little too strong and hurts his neck, and he gets submitted. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to come back down to 135. But he's 33 years old. He's had a lifetime of cutting weight back in high school and college and probably even in grade school, primary school. This guy's been wrestling his entire life. I don't think his body responded well. So the first round, he did exactly what he's capable of. And exactly what we expected him to do. He got the easy takedown. He sat up in guard. He got off a little bit of ground and pound. The second round, the takedown does come, but now he's just too exhausted to do anything. And it's frustrating because he goes just throwing up short little shots, like not even doing much. But Caldwell's just clinging on to him. He's not doing anything. At this point, I know I'm screwed. Bellator doesn't offer live betting opportunities, or else you just take Higo. Because you can see Caldwell, if round 2 is going like this, you have not enough energy to mount any type of offense. Round 3 is not going to magically get any better. I'm hoping, trying to be optimistic, because what can I do? I can't hedge out of this ticket. I can't bet the other side and get plus money in Higo. I'm screwed. I'm stuck in this ticket. I'm hoping that, he does catch a second wind. Third round starts, again, first 90 seconds, maybe the first 2 minutes. It looks like he's got a bit of a wind to him. He gets the takedown, but he's just clinging on. He's just holding on. He's not doing anything. And nothing really happens in the round, but there's just the sense that Higo did a little bit more. Want to win, want to fight, want to go for it. Jumped guard in the guillotine choke. It shows that he's trying to finish. Whereas Caldwell went out to wrestle. Now, Sabatello went out to wrestle and put on a clinic. Vanderfort went out to wrestle and, got the job done. Neal went out to wrestle and, had to face a tad bit of adversity, but got the job done. Caldwell is by far the best wrestler of all those guys. Couldn't get the job done. It was more than just wrestling. It's not just a wrestling match. It's got to be a little bit of fighting into there. It's got to be a little bit of a fighting element. And beyond the first round, he couldn't do it. It was frustrating to watch. And again, you can tape study and you can do the research. You can do all these things. But I'm not in there fighting for the guy. I don't know how his body's reacting. I don't know how the weight cut is. I don't know about his lingering hip injury leading into the fight. I don't know about that stuff. It's a shot in the dark when you look at it from that perspective. So is what it is. Tough outing for Caldwell. Again, at 33, I don't know where he goes from here because he's still ultra talented. He'll still beat young prospects and middling level guys, but they're paying him enough money that you're going to want him to fight high end top 5, top 10 talent, and he just seems like he keeps coming short up against them. And then, Chris Cyborg, what do you want to know? You've either watched the fight live last night, you've seen the clip since. You just put the thrashing on Leslie Smith. Leslie Smith's tough, man. Chick Diaz. That's why they call her Chick Diaz. She's not afraid of nobody. She stood in front of Cyborg. She largely stood at distance with Cyborg, and she took some of her best shots. Got clipped in the first round, went down, survived, got that German suplex in the first round. But again, survives that first round. Second round, same thing. Gets drubbed by a right hand, crashes down, and just would hit the ground and just survive. I really thought she's losing every round. She's losing. The third round, I honestly thought, first 2 rounds, Cyborg easy. Cyborg hurts Leslie Smith. After that, I don't know if it was like Cyborg took her foot off the gas. Either she felt sorry for Leslie, either she was just like, you know what, I'm going to take my time and conserve myself a little bit, or she just knew she was up 2 rounds and had to coast. But the third and fourth round were a little bit closer. Smith landed that jab over and over. Smith landed a couple good leg kicks. The difference is that whenever Smith would hit Cyborg, it doesn't really do anything. And this is Cyborg Santos. This is Cyborg Giannino. These shots were really not bothering her all that much. Like, it weren't really bothering all that much. When Cyborg would land on Smith, it was like, even though Smith's got a cast iron chin, is known for durability, is known for that just scrap attitude, it's like there was a huge difference in power. And so when one person's guns go bang, bang, and the other ones go pow, pow, bang, bang's going to win in the long run. That's what happened. I really did think that she was going to survive. I thought, first of all, the Cyborg TKO prop, which seemed like free money. In what world, because we've seen this fight before, and Leslie Smith lasted 1 minute and 38 seconds, and that was a better version of Leslie Smith, but it was arguably a better version of Cyborg. But we've seen it before. She toppled over. The Cyborg inside the distance, the Cyborg by TKO, it's free money. And then, there's 9 seconds left. It's already like, well, the ticket's gone. And then part of me is also like, well, good for Leslie Smith. Good for Leslie Smith. She went 25 minutes, shows a lot of character, and Cyborg gets the finish. Like, after all of that, Cyborg gets the finish. It almost reminded me of Anthony, not as much. This is 25 minutes of a beating against one of the best ever, but it was like the other day, Antonina Shevchenko versus Andrea Lee. It's like you're stuck in this triangle armbar for 4 minutes, and then there's like 5 seconds left, and you get tapped at the 5 seconds. Like all that work, to survive, and then got at the end. So, Cyborg's a big star for Bellator. She was a star before she came to the UFC. When she was with Strikeforce, she comes to the UFC. She was a fairly star there. Just they never really had anybody for her to fight at 145 pounds. It's always been the story. Bellator's done the best job they can to cater to her and the 145-pound weight class, but there's just nobody there. She's in the same situation that she's always been in and that she's always going to be in. I'm not going to lie, Cyborg did look a little slower in this fight than she has in previous years. She looked a little bit more lethargic. The commentators kept kind of chalking it up to, she's taking her time now. She's smarter. She's wiser. Oh, old Cyborg would have just rushed in to finish it. Oh, old Cyborg would have done. Is it possible? That's all very true. It's all possible. Old Cyborg was a little bit reckless. The Amanda Nunes fight, she cost herself that fight just from fighting the worst game plan of all game plans. And if there's one fight to be made for either girl, that's it. Nunes could theoretically fight Shevchenko in a trilogy match, I guess. That fight makes sense, but they're both the best to do it at this weight class at 45. Nunes, the best 35er and 45er. She does have the knockout win over Cyborg. Bellator and UFC are never going to cross-promote. Neither of them figure to be released from their contract anytime soon. And by the time any of them ever did become a free agent, the fight's just too gone. Like, if you're going to do it, you need to do it now or soon. Because, I think Cyborg is starting to slow down a bit. And Nunes does not look to be slowing down whatsoever, but has also gone on record saying she doesn't want to fight for a whole lot longer. So, it's a shame. It's a shame. Nunes probably knocks her out again if they fight. But if Cyborg comes in as scientific Cyborg, who's patient and calculated, takes her time, then who knows? But the only person that at 145 pounds, seemingly on the planet, that can fight Cyborg, it would be Amanda Nunes, right? And Amanda Nunes, she's pretty much run out everybody else, so it would make sense to make Cyborg. So anyways, official prediction there is the UFC cut Meikan Anderson, right? So it makes a lot of sense to just for Bellator to sign Meikan Anderson and throw Meikan Anderson with Bellator with Cyborg. A, she just fought Amanda Nunes, so she's not scared, right? B, she's a legitimate 145 pounder. And C, there's always been talks of Meikan Anderson fighting Cyborg and Amanda Nunes, and they were really trying to push her and move her along, and it just never came to fruition. But yeah, I think now's the time to do it. Just make sure she hasn't. Yeah. I think that's the fight to make. And the other thing is, there's only like 445 pounders on the planet, so they're gonna have to fight each other. Anyways, yeah, if you've made it this far into the recap, you're into Bellator stuff, you're my kind of guy. We'd probably get along. We'd probably hang out at the bar and have a beer under regular circumstances. Hopefully, we get back to the circumstances real soon. But until then, we got a UFC coming up later on. So yeah, tune in for the recap on that. And good luck with your bets going forward. And we'll talk to you guys soon.